The thing that I love about my dad, but he helped me do everything I can. And I miss him.
A father drove out to a chicken spot in Texas just to spend a little time with his kid, and he never made it back home. Watch his mother stand in front of a crowd and try to put words to what that cost her.
My son should still be here. He should still be here. I should not be standing here because of my son simply wanting to see his kids.
Everybody who loved him kept saying the same thing about how he spent his last months.
His kids for sure. I promise you, every time we talked, he talking about them kids. He want his kids, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, I gotta figure, you know what I'm saying? He trying to figure out a way to get to his kids. Every time we talk.
He is the first of 3 parents in this video, and by the time we reach the last one, you are going to be asking the same hard question about all 3. Hold that thought, because it is going to sit with you, and it should. 3 families, 3 cities, 3 young parents right at the center of it all, and every single one of these stories runs straight through the people who were supposed to be the safest thing in a child's world. One man died begging for a little time with his kids. One mother took the lives of her own 2 young ones inside the apartment they slept in every night. One man emptied a rifle into a car that was already driving away from him. Different states, different weapons, different endings once the courts got involved, and the same quiet warning humming underneath all of it. We are starting in Texas. His name was Tyrone Cedric Darling Jr., and by the end, you were going to feel like you knew him. He was born in San Antonio on January 19, 1992, and his mother raised him with the man she married, Michael McGee Sr., the man Tyrone grew up calling his father. When Tyrone was still a young boy, the family packed up and moved to the Dallas and Fort Worth area in 2002, and that is the place that shaped him into the person all these people came out to remember. He was a big kid with a bigger presence, and he put it to work on the football field. At Juan Seguin High School in Arlington, he played inside linebacker and was good enough that college scouts started circling. Recruiting profiles from the class of 2011 put him around 6 feet tall and better than 200 pounds, a steady hitter with the size and instincts to make it to the next level. When signing day finally came around, he put his name down with the University of Texas at El Paso to play linebacker for the Miners. For a young man out of Arlington, that was the whole dream lining up neatly in front of him, the kind of moment a whole neighborhood celebrates. Life had other plans though, the way it so often does with the young men we lose too early. He became a father the very next year, in 2012, and that football path quietly faded while a different, harder path opened up in its place. He never played out a full college run, and instead he went to work, taking a job as a security guard in the Arlington area while he raised his children and chased the one creative dream he could not put down. That dream was music.
Back in school, yeah, nigga, we skipping school. We skipping all like things, grabbing on ass. Nigga, we was smoking so in molasses. Yeah, in molasses, yeah, no, they out, skipping all classes. Nigga, we was bragging, nigga, we was foodie, keep it foodie. Nigga, watch me not my life, this move. We was beating on the locker, fucking with some hoes that was just coming from soccer.
Tyrone loved to rap, and the people closest to him say some of his favorite hours on this earth were spent doing exactly that, packed in a car, going back and forth for no money and no crowd, just for the pure love of it.
I had to talk my shit, get on this whole roof one time, nigga. What's up, Chachi, nigga? You spit one time, feel me on this hoe. It's like, whoever try me gon' need them a ribbon. Smoking the air like September 11. Not Mr. T, but I pity the fool. I'm a mechanic, I'm good with the tool. Shoot your shit up, make you move off the block. Ask that boy Troy how I play with the blocks. If I'm in your city, you won't be too pretty. my bitches sedity, they loving my cock. Aim at your head, I don't shoot at the rocks. I'm at the bar drinking Henny and rocks. Look at my chain, how it's filled up with rocks. Look at my chain, how it's filled up with rocks. Nigga, you friendly, stop playing that role. Packing that shit that'll blow out your soul. Say you 100, but I heard you told. Niggas is pussy, they really gon' fold. Smoking the blunt while I load up the chopper. You imitation, you fake, you imposter. I got gorillas and G's on my roster. Smoking the air like a motherfucking roster, bitch. Hitters on deck, hitters on deck, hitters on deck. And I'm about to check. And nigga Big T, I got next. Bar no place. San Antonio, Texas, I got next. I got next. San Antonio, Texas, I got next.
Listen to his own brother lay out how they used to do it, half asleep and still going.
I remember sitting in the car for hours. Me, my brother, Jay Lacey, with Damien Tyrone. Hours they'd be in there just freestyling. We'll be falling asleep.
That was the man. He leaned on artists like Tupac, Jay-Z, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar, and put his own tracks up online, and the songs kept circling back to the same things that were on his mind in real life, which were his struggles, his fatherhood, and his fight to break the cycles he came from. He was never signed and never famous, and honestly, that is a big part of what makes this one cut so deep, because he wasn't some untouchable star. He was just a regular working dad who loved his kids and loved to rhyme, the kind of person you probably grew up next to. The people around him also watched him grow into a better version of himself right before the end, which somehow makes it hurt worse. One of the men who came up with him talked about the person Tyrone was becoming in his final stretch.
He went through a lot. He was going through a lot. But I know for a fact, last time we talked, he was taking them stepping stones, being a better man and trying to change and right his wrongs and everything.
And if you want to know the kind of energy he carried into a room, the friends who knew him longest kept coming back to a saying he lived by, one he wore on his skin.
We were in Spanish class, and this when everybody first started getting tattoos, and one of his first tattoos was bar none. And that's a saying that we said, you know, you don't fear nothing but God, and that's always how he was, you know. When he came around, you got encouraged.
Off the field and away from the mic, the people who paint a picture of him are a warm one, and it's worth sitting in for a second before the hard part. He was a father several times over, and the family who stood up to speak about him kept landing on the same handful of things: an infectious smile, a goofy sense of humor, and a way of walking into a room and lifting everybody in it. His own twin brother put it as plain as it gets, saying the two of them were close and stacked up years of memories together, the good and the wild and the hard all mixed in.
A lot of y'all know me, a lot of y'all don't. If you do, my name is Taylor. I'm one of the twins. Me and Tyrone, we was very close. We had a lot of good memories together, ups, downs, you know, wild times, good learning experiences.
That room was packed for somebody who did pour into people, and everybody there understood that the loudest thing about Tyrone had always been how hard he loved the folks around him, his kids most of all.
The thing that I love about my dad was he helped me do everything I can.
He helped you do everything, and what else?
I want him to love me.
He loved you. What else? What else, baby?
I want him to love me forever, and I miss him. Bad.
Here is where his story turns, and it turns on the mother of one of his children, a woman named Tamaya Williams. They had been together and they shared a child, and after the relationship ended, the two of them were left doing the hardest job that two people who no longer get along can be handed, which is raising a kid across two separate homes. The official police account keeps it clean and calls it co-parenting friction tied to a custody exchange, and the neutral paperwork in the public record does not spell out a whole lot more than that. His family, though, tells it a lot heavier because they were living it right alongside him. The way they describe it, seeing his own child had turned into a battle he had to fight over and over again, and it was wearing him all the way down in a way the people who loved him could see up close. His own mother stood up at his vigil and refused to soften a single word of what her son went through.
He wanted his children. They put me through hell on a regular basis. We just wanted to see the kids. That's it.
I want to be fair here because those are a grieving mother's words about a private family situation, and the surviving side of any custody fight almost never gets a public chance to give their own version. What the neutral record does show plainly is that a young father was fighting to stay in his kid's life, that the arrangement between the parents was tense, and that on one ordinary December afternoon, he showed up to do the most normal thing in the world, which was pick up his child. That afternoon was Monday, December 12th, 2022. The meeting spot was a parking lot outside a restaurant called Lisa's Chicken on the 1600 block of West Division Street in Arlington, a busy public place in the middle of a weekday, the kind of neutral ground that people pick on purpose precisely because it is supposed to feel safe. Around 4:44 in the afternoon, Arlington police got the call about a shooting there, and when officers rolled up, they found Tyrone on the ground with a gunshot wound, and he was pronounced dead right there at the scene. 30 years old, gone in a parking lot in broad daylight on a run to see his kid. What police say happened in the minutes right before is the part that will stay with you. According to the department and the witnesses on the scene, Tamaya Williams, who was 29 at the time, arrived to pick up the child she shared with Tyrone, and an argument started up between the two of them during the handoff. She had not driven herself though, and that detail is where a private argument turned into something a whole city would end up watching on tape. A 23-year-old woman named Chanel Sherrod had driven her there, and Sherrod did not stay in the car. The key evidence in this case is a surveillance camera in that parking lot, and police say the footage tells the story cleanly, start to finish. Sherrod got out of the vehicle and got into a physical fight with Tyrone, and while the two of them were tangled up in the middle of that lot, the video shows Williams pull out a handgun and shoot him. Then, according to police, both women climbed back into the vehicle and drove off, leaving him lying where he fell. Think about how fast that is, a normal pickup turning into a killing in the time it takes to lose your temper, all of it caught by a camera that never blinks.
Man, y'all pray for this man. That's the auntie, y'all. That's the auntie. She said she the auntie. She got shot right up here. Yeah, they just took the girlfriend out. What was wrong with the girlfriend? I don't know. I think she was with him. I think it was fighting. Yeah, that old white man right there told me what happened. He said that he was fighting with the girlfriend. She had the baby in the car, and he pushed her or something, and the boyfriend pulled up. Then she got in the car with the gun, and she shot him in the back. This boy that's laying down here. Oh, she made me cry when she started screaming when she seen that body. The auntie? She said she the auntie.
Yeah, identify?
No, she haven't went over there. They ain't moved the blanket yet so she can identify, but they told her already that he got shot. She just thinking he got shot till she seen him laying there.
Mm-hmm.
Ask this white man, he'll tell me the story. Now, what just that happen again?
Them and the kid were in the store. She is not was in the store to get the kid.
So the guy that's dead.
The guy that's dead was in the store.
Uh-huh.
And when she came out of the car, she put the baby in the back seat, got herself in the front seat, and was closing the door when he came out and he started harassing her. I don't know what they said.
So he started fighting on her.
Well, arguing, but not fighting.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
Then she jumped out and she started trying to swing, but then she went back in the car, and he came out. He came around the back of the car, called him over there. Two of them got over there, and then he was somewhere around where the ambulance is when she fired around up in his back.
Did she leave? Did they get her? Or she drove out?
She drove up.
Oh, so she shot him in there.
The young one who is supposed to be picked up that day was not hurt in the shooting, and police say the child was placed with relatives afterward. That is the one small mercy in a story that does not carry many, and it's the exact detail his mother could barely get through at the vigil because the whole thing had started with a father simply wanting to be in that young one's life.
My son should still be here. He should still be here. I should not be standing here because of my son simply wanting to see his kids.
The investigation moved fast, and you have to give the detectives their credit for that. Working off the scene and that surveillance footage, they had arrest warrants for both women within hours. Late that same night, members of the United States Marshals North Texas Fugitive Task Force tracked Williams and Sherrod to an address in Arlington and took them into custody without any trouble at all. Both women were booked into the Arlington City Jail, each one facing a single count of murder. By sunrise, the arrests were done and the story was already fading out of the news cycle. And not fade is its own kind of heartbreak because it's how a lot of everyday cases go when they're not attached to a famous name. Past those first few arrests and the murder charges, there is very little in the open public record about how the case actually played out. No widely reported trial, no plea deal, no sentence that has surfaced in the news since. His name now lives on mostly in a gun violence memorial that marks the day he died, and his family lives with the quiet, which for a lot of them is worse than the loud part ever was. His mother did something rare at that vigil too, because instead of aiming all of her anger only at the two women who were charged, she turned a good part of it on a whole culture of pettiness that she felt had helped push her son toward the edge. She admitted in front of everybody that there were nights the fight got so heavy she nearly told her own son to walk away from his parental rights just to make the pain stop.
Listen, I'm telling y'all, I was to the point where I wanted to tell my son to give up rights because it was so bad. My son cried. He vomited. He was angry. He thought about doing he shouldn't have been wanting to do, simply to see his kids. Nobody understands what we've been through. Nobody. You can pull records, you can do whatever the hell you want to do, but y'all don't understand what my son went through simply to see his kids. They were put in the middle of things they shouldn't have been put in the middle of.
And then she spoke directly to the women in that crowd, asking them to stop backing each other up in the wrong, to check a friend who's keeping a good father away from her kids instead of hyping her on.
Girlfriends, stop co-signing bullshit. Call your girlfriend out. Call her out. Girl, you should do better than that. Quit giving that man a hard time. Stop.
What happens to Tyrone also fits a pattern that safety experts have been sounding the alarm on for years. Custody exchanges turn into flashpoints precisely because they force two people who couldn't make it work to stand face to face at their tensest moment. And families often pick a store lot or a restaurant lot, believing the open public setting will keep everybody calm. The hard truth is that an open lot gives you almost nothing to lean on once an argument catches fire, and a third person who tags along for the ride, a driver, a new partner, a friend, can get pulled straight into the middle of it, which is exactly what police say happened in that parking lot. Now, if a shooting at a custody handoff sounds to you like a strange one-off nightmare, I need you to understand how much it is not, because the pattern is real and it repeats. Back in September of 2018 in Alexandria, Louisiana, a woman named Kayla Cootie met her estranged husband, Thomas Cootie Jr., in a Walmart parking lot to exchange their young daughter, the same kind of public, supposedly safe spot that everybody assumes is the smart choice. During that exchange, she shot him and he died right there at the scene, with the children close by and thankfully unharmed. She claimed it was self-defense, but a jury did not buy that story and convicted her of second-degree murder. Same setup, same public lot, same custody tension stretched tight until it finally snapped, and a young parent dead over the handoff of a child. That's what makes Tyrone's story a warning and not only a tragedy. His mother stood up in front of everybody and turned her grief into a plea, and she wasn't just talking about her own family, she was talking to yours too.
My son went through hell. He went through hell. Simply because why? It didn't make sense. It literally cost him his life. The phone calls in the middle of the night. I picked my son up in the middle of the night, crying, vomiting, upset, wanting to do that I can't, son. I don't have that kind of bond. You can't do things. I understand your frustration. I understand your anger. This was not okay.
Before we move on from him, hear the whole of what she was asking for, because it was not revenge and it was not sympathy. She wanted her son back, and knowing she could not have that, she wanted the next family to hear her in time.
My son should be here. I don't want t-shirts with his picture. I don't want nobody to know Tyrone Darling. I don't want y'all to stand for him. I want him here. He should be here. And I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off because it could have been avoided.
That is our first parent, a father who died reaching for his kids. Our second parent flips the whole thing inside out, because in this next story, the danger to the young ones was not waiting out in a parking lot. It was living in the same home, sleeping under the same roof, and the warning signs had been flashing bright for years before anybody paid the price for missing them. We move from Texas up to Baltimore, Maryland, into a woman named Jamaria Hall. She was born in Baltimore on September 11, 1992, and her early life barely shows up anywhere in the public record, which is its own quiet kind of sad. She becomes a name the whole city knows only because of what happened to her two children, a son who was 8 years old and a daughter who was 6 years old. From this point on, I'm going to call them the young ones, because they deserve that gentleness a whole lot more than they deserve to be turned into a headline.
You wanted them new KFC wings, and you got them, right?
Yeah.
Then you come back to the house to say you hungry again.
We had buffalo wings.
So what did we go to America's Best and get?
We had...
The father of those young ones, Davin Thomas Sr., was in and out of the picture over the years, and that turns out to matter a great deal to how all of this unfolded. To the people around her, Jamaria looked like a devoted mom, and I want you to hold on to that, because the gap between how she looked and what was really happening is the whole story. A former classmate described her as someone who put her kids first, always posting their pictures and always talking about doing better for them. And the neighbors would see the young ones playing outside, riding around, looking happy and looking cared for. She even ran a small podcast where she talked openly about her mental health, about how her stress fed her anxiety and her anxiety fed her depression. On the surface, she looked like a young mother who was trying her best against long odds.
Good morning, Grand Rising. Sometimes I slip and say good morning because I'm so used to saying good morning. But Grand Rising and Supreme Rising makes me feel so much better. It makes me feel like we are here for a divine purpose and a special reason that we all uniquely have. Good morning to me just seems like I'm at a funeral, I'm mourning, something's going on, I'm sad, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I just wanted to come on and say to you all, you have something to be grateful about. We all have something to be grateful about. And sometimes when we may talk to our family or our friends about some of the things that we are complaining about, it's just simply because, you know, we know that we could be doing better. We know that we could be loving one another better and we could be reaching our maximum potential, but we just have to be grateful and grounded with what we have, and we have to learn to have acceptance, okay? Once you accept what you have, your gratitude will fly through the roof. To me, I feel like people may criticize me for being happy all the time. Like, I can be broke, but I have a smile on my face. I have two beautiful lights who have smiles on their faces at all times. My seatbelt is killing me, but I'm about to get off the car. I just was coming on here and sharing with y'all some motivation and encouraging words on this wonderful, magnificent, as you will call, Friday.
Underneath that surface, there was a much darker record, and it did not start in the week of the killings. It started years earlier. Back in 2018, Jamaria set fire to her own parents' apartment while her young ones were inside. This was not a careless accident with the stove. Court documents describe her disabling the smoke detectors and burning family photos before she left with the children, who were later found unharmed at a hospital. She pleaded guilty to first-degree arson and child endangerment and served a year behind bars for it. Look at that clearly, because that right there was a scream for help from somebody whose mind was already coming apart, and it put her own kids in danger in the most direct way possible.
Being in prison really, really takes a toll on you and your mind if you let it. But what I am totally grateful about is what it brought me through. My testimony will be televised, okay? It's not over for me. It's not over for my children. We went through the storm, but we came out clean. We will continue to prosper, okay? We will continue to prevail, okay? No matter what, God is with you. Your angels are protecting you. Your guardian angels are here with you. I love my ancestors. Can you hear me? Them some beautiful people. They have blessed, and y'all are blessed. Y'all are a blessing to witness such a beautiful soul. I am such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful soul. And I am at my destination, so I'm going to talk to y'all later, okay? Bye.
The sentence she got tells you a lot about how these things quietly slip through the cracks. She was handed a 5-year term with all but 1 year suspended along with probation, and she later described that whole period on her own podcast, a show she called Be More Charming, as a mental breakdown set off by stress and depression. She was telling the world in her own voice that she was not okay, and that message was sitting out in the open for anyone paying attention. One of her neighbors said out loud what a whole lot of people were thinking once the full picture finally came into view, and it is hard to argue with a word of it.
They should have furthered the investigation because you set your own house on fire with your kids in it. So CPS should have took my opinion, CPS should have took the kids right away.
Instead of the kids being kept far away from her, the young ones ended up right back in her care. While Jamaria was locked up, the children's paternal grandparents took them in for a while, but a child welfare agency removed them from that home and returned them to their mother. Then, in 2019, Jamaria went to court and was granted custody after the father did not respond or show up to the proceedings. Sit with the shape of that for a second. A woman who had just set a fire around her own children was handed those same children right back with little sign of any real monitoring afterward, and the system that was supposed to protect them more or less moved on to the next case. The children's own grandfather never made peace with that call, and he said as much out loud, that they gave his grandchildren back to their mother after she had lit a house on fire with them inside. And the stress in that home never truly cooled down either, because when investigators finally walked through the apartment, a court letter about ongoing custody issues was sitting right there at the scene, a small paper reminder of a fight that had never really ended. For about 2 years it held together, at least from the outside looking in, and that is the cruelest part of the timeline. Then, in the weeks before August of 2021, the walls started coming down fast. Jamaria had stopped taking her medication, and the sickness in her mind came rushing back in with nothing left to hold it off. Around a week before the end, she told her brother she was fighting evil spirits to protect herself and her children, which is not the talk of a woman being cruel on purpose, but the talk of a woman losing her grip on what was even real. Her boyfriend later described bizarre and frightening behavior in those same days, and yet, right up until the middle of the month, the young ones still saw outside, playing like any other kids on the block with no idea what was coming. The final stretch is where all those years of missed chances finally came due at once. Investigators believe the young ones lost their lives inside that Southwest Baltimore apartment around the evening of August 19th, 2021. I am not going to walk you through what was done to them because those young ones deserve to be remembered as children and not as a crime scene, and because no parent watching this needs those images in their head. It is enough to say that the two of them, a little boy and his little sister, never made it back out of that home, and that the person responsible was the one person the entire world tells a child they can trust. In the days that followed, the apartment stayed quiet in a way that slowly started to worry the people living nearby. Neighbors noticed Jamaria getting rid of large items, including the children's beds, and it was the kind of thing that only made a sick sort of sense to them much later. She told her own mother a story about being in the hospital and said the young ones were staying with their father, which was not true. Around that same stretch, the children's father spotted her wandering the street, screaming and cursing to no one, looking like she was under the influence, which we now understand was the illness talking and not anything she had swallowed. It was a smell that finally broke the whole thing open. On August 24th, a maintenance worker went into the apartment after complaints about a foul odor, and that is when the young ones were found. The people on that block were left holding the kind of grief that doesn't have a bottom to it, and one neighbor in particular couldn't even figure out how to explain it to her own child because the two families had been that close.
I have no clue how I'm gonna explain this to my baby, because she played with them every day.
Police did not have to look very long. The next day, on August 25th, Jamaria was located riding in an Uber over in Baltimore County, and she waived her rights and confessed in detail. She was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and held without bail, and at first, this looked like it was heading straight toward a long stretch in prison. What changed the whole direction of the case was her mind. In September of 2021, she was declared incompetent to stand trial, which means she could not even understand the charges being read against her, and her competency was not restored until March of 2022. The real ending did not arrive until April of 2024. Jamaria pleaded guilty to the killings, but was found not criminally responsible because of a serious mental illness called schizoaffective disorder, which brings on delusions and hallucinations. What that legal finding means in plain language is that the court decided her sickness and not a normal free choice is what drove her to do it. So instead of prison, she was committed to a state psychiatric hospital for treatment with no set release date on the calendar. There is one detail here that is worth slowing all the way down for because it matters to how you judge the outcome. The prosecutor on this case did not just accept the diagnosis and move on. She dug deep into the jail calls and the records herself, and she came away agreeing that the illness was genuine, and the judge accepted it too. Some people hear that and feel pure outrage, and some people hear it and feel a heavy, complicated kind of pity, and honestly, you can sit with both of those at once and not be wrong. Now, if that whole pattern of red flags being waved off feels familiar to you, it should, because a mother in Minnesota lived almost the exact same story with a very different ending. Julissa Thaler had a long history of mental illness and drug problems, and she lost custody of her 6-year-old son, Eli Hart, more than once. Even with all of that on the record, a judge handed her full custody in May of 2022 over the worries of social workers and over the objections of the boy's own father. Just 10 days after that ruling, she took that little boy's life. Unlike Jamaria, though, Thaler was found competent, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life without parole, and the county later paid out more than $2 million for a wrongful death lawsuit over the warnings that got ignored. Two mothers, two different states, two different endings, and the same young ones failed by the grown folks around them long before the worst thing ever happened. That is the piece I need you to hold on to as we move to the last story. In both of these cases, the danger was known. People saw it, people said it out loud, and the system still handed those children right back. So the real question stops being how could a person do this and becomes something harder, which is how many times does a warning have to be ignored before it turns into a funeral? That is two parents now and two houses of pain that all the warning signs in the world never managed to spare. Our third and final story lives at a completely different volume than the first two, loud and fast and caught on camera in the middle of a city street, and it kicked off over something as old as people themselves, which is plain jealousy. We land in Phoenix, Arizona, and the man at the heart of it is Keyshawn Stewart, who is 35 years old. The public does not have a full picture of his life, and that's partly by design in cases like this, but the people who did know him remembered him on a gun violence memorial as somebody loving, full of life, and quick to see the good in things. What we do know clearly is the relationship that would end up costing him everything he had left to give. Keyshawn had been in a romantic relationship for about 6 years with a man named Khalid Williams, who is 33. By pretty much every account, it was a rocky one, a long run of arguments over the years, though nothing that had ever crossed the line into weapons before. The thing that finally broke that bond was a new love. In October of 2024, the two men split after Khalid found out that Keyshawn was seeing a woman and that she was pregnant with Keyshawn's child. Police would later put a name on the whole shape of it and call it a love triangle. One man watching the person he had loved for 6 years start a brand new family that he wasn't going to be part of. They tried to keep things civil for a little while, but the peace kept snagging on a very ordinary thing, a car. Keyshawn owned the vehicle, but Khalid was the one making the payments on it, and that kind of money tangle keeps two people arguing long after the love part is supposed to be finished and buried. There is one more piece of background here that becomes very important, and it's the weapon question. Khalid had 6 prior felony convictions on his record, and none of them were for violence. But under Arizona law, those convictions still made him what the state calls a prohibited possessor, which is just a formal way of saying he wasn't legally allowed to have a gun in his hands at all. Keep that fact tucked in your back pocket, because a man who is flat out barred from owning a firearm is about to reach for one of the deadliest kinds a person can get their hands on. Now, this case sits inside a bigger conversation that doesn't always get treated fairly, and it's worth naming plainly. This was violence inside a same-sex relationship, and the reporting around it leaned hard on that catchy love triangle label. That framing is neat and it moves clicks, but it can quietly bury the real issue underneath it, which is that a breakup, a new baby, and a gun in the wrong hands is a deadly mix, no matter who's dating who. The heartbreak here doesn't need a spicy headline. It speaks for itself once you slow down and look at it. The day everything ended was Monday, December 23rd, 2024, the day right before Christmas Eve. It began, of all the small things it could have been, with yet another fight about that same car. Keyshawn, his pregnant girlfriend, and Khalid were going back and forth on the phone about the vehicle, and the argument got hot enough that Keyshawn and the young woman made the decision to drive over to Khalid's apartment near 17th and Maryland Avenues and settle it face to face. That one decision, choosing to close the distance instead of just hanging up the phone and letting it cool, is the hinge that the entire tragedy swings on. It's the kind of choice that feels small in the moment and turns out to be everything. When they pulled up, the two men got into a physical fight, and later, when Khalid was sitting in a courtroom looking at murder charges, he wanted everybody in that room to believe he was the one who had been under threat that day. Watch him try to hand the blame straight to the very people who drove to his door.
They were warned not to come to my home. They were threatening to harm me. She's just as much responsible for this as I am.
Hold on to that self-defense claim because the evidence takes a chainsaw to it. The fight itself was ugly, but it was survivable, the kind of thing two grown men walk away with bruised pride. What came next was not survivable, and it wasn't defense. As Kishan and his girlfriend gave up and started to drive away, Khalid came back out with an AK-47 style rifle and opened fire at their car. This wasn't one panicked shot from a cornered man protecting his home. Police say he let off more than 25 rounds at a vehicle that was already leaving in the opposite direction of him, and you simply can't square that number with the story of a scared man defending himself, because you don't need 25 bullets to stop something that's driving in the opposite direction of you. One of those bullets is the one that mattered, the one that ended everything. The pregnant girlfriend, who was right there in that car with him, later stood up in court and described the exact moment their whole lives came apart, and hers is the voice that ought to carry the most weight in this entire thing.
While we were leaving and he was shooting at us, one of the bullets hit my boyfriend in the back of the head, which is what caused us to crash the car, and he landed on my belly, and I held him. I wake up screaming every night. My son will never know his father.
She told the court the bullet that struck Kishan is what caused the wreck, and that in the middle of all the chaos, she landed against her own belly and held onto him while she sat trapped inside that car. Sit with that picture for 1 second. A pregnant woman pinned inside a crashed car, holding on to the father of her unborn child for as long as her body could stand it. That's the real human cost that a tidy little phrase like love triangle tries to smooth over and hide from you. Kishan was rushed to a hospital and he did not survive his injuries. Williams ran from the scene, and it took police 3 days to finally track him down, catching up to him at a Mexican food restaurant after they located his car. He was arrested on December 26th and booked on 4 felony counts, including first-degree murder, with his bond set at $1 million. Police say that when he was interviewed, he admitted to the shooting after they showed him the video, and he even said Kishan didn't deserve it, but he still leaned right back on that same claim that he had feared for his own life. At his very first court appearance, the judge had to warn him more than once to stop talking because he kept trying to argue his own side out loud in front of everyone.
I suggest that you not make any statements. If your attorney was here, he'd tell you just to shut up.
The very last exchange of that hearing tells you everything about where the blame really tried to land and where it actually belongs. Williams pointed the finger at that grieving pregnant woman and said she should have stopped Kishan from ever coming over, and her answer was 2 small words that carried the entire weight of that night.
She should have stopped him.
I tried.
No, you didn't.
As of the most recent public reporting, Williams's case was still working its way through the Maricopa County courts, with no trial outcome or plea reported yet, which is pretty normal for a first-degree murder case that can take well over a year to reach an ending. So that young woman is still out there waiting for it to be over, and so is a child who is going to grow up hearing this story secondhand instead of ever getting to know the father who is in it. Now look at all 3 of them together, laid out side by side, because when you do that, they are all telling you one single thing in 3 different voices. Tyrone Darling died in a parking lot for the plain crime of wanting to see his kid. Jamaria Hall took the lives of her own 2 young ones while a system that had every reason on earth to watch her closely kept looking the other way. Kishan Stewart was shot in the back of the head while driving away from a fight he thought was already finished. 3 homes, 3 cities, 3 completely different endings in court, and in every single one of them, the deadliest thing in the room was somebody who was supposed to be family. The lesson underneath all of this is not slick and it is not new, and maybe that is exactly why we keep having to learn it the hard way. When love ends, the anger that gets left sitting behind has to go somewhere, and when a gun or a breaking mind is parked in that same small space, it is almost always a child who ends up paying the bill. The way out of it is boring and it is real, and it sounds a whole lot like what one family friend told a room full of grieving people back in Texas, standing there trying to keep the next family off this same list.
So a couple of things that we'll take from here, young men. As the brother stated, they're taking up that mantle. If you have children, take up that mantle. Be present by any means necessary. And sometimes we just get beside ourselves But take a step back always and think before we act. Should be something that we take away from here. Think before we act, because it affects not just the individuals involved, but it affects communities. It affects families.
Rest in peace to Tyrone Darling, and to Denaria and Davin, and to Keyshawn Stewart. If you know somebody who is stuck in the middle of a custody fight, a bad breakup, or a mind that is quietly slipping, do not scroll on past this one. Drop a word in the comments about what you would say to them, because the right voice at the right moment is sometimes the only thing standing between one of these stories and the next one.